We are joined on the phone by Doug Howard, best known from the band Touch. He also has played with a lot of people over the years, Edgar Winter, Todd Rundgren, but his band Touch is back after 40 years with a brand new album. It's called Tomorrow Never Comes. Hey, Doug, how's it going today?
I'm doing, man. I'm doing.
Your band Touch is back with a new single, Tomorrow Never Comes. First of all, can you tell the listeners a bit about, how this all came about? I mean, it's been almost 40 years since Touch has had some new music out.
40 years. We've done a lot of stuff since then. We all sort of went our separate ways. I went off with Todd Rundgren for a while, and then I was with Edgar Winter for a long time after that. And then everybody just sort of drifted away. But about 2 or 3 years ago, we got word from a couple of record labels that, they'd love to have another album out of us because the band just never seemed to go away. And I think also because they wanted one before one of us dropped into off the planet. So the fact that all 4 members were still around, after a couple of years, we said, yeah, let's see what happens. The timing was right. So we all got into the studio, and first thing we did was an a cappella version of Don't You Know What Love Is, which was our hit of back then, one of our radio charters, I guess you could call it. And it sounded exactly the same. The vocals were all still there. So then we started dragging songs out, and the next thing you know, we're at work. And it was interesting because it was like we had only been working like 20 minutes ago. We fell right back into the same pattern, even though it was over 40 years ago. So that's how it all started,
That's awesome. Yeah, I imagine it's kind of like riding a bike, maybe getting back together again. And, you guys were so successful and, had your chemistry back then. So, obviously, as you mentioned, it's definitely still there.
We do have an interesting way of working together, and it seems as though the 4 of us need to be together for that sound to happen. I did Stun Lear. I was actually the lead vocalist in Stun Lear. And that was, a melodic rock album, but, and along the same vein. And Mark went off into Drive, She Said, and Craig as well. But when the 3 of us, or 4 of us, I should say, get together, and particularly Glenn's kind of unique way of approaching drum fills, and he's really particular about tone. It's for better or worse. That seems to be what happens. And it never went away.
And the new song is off a new album of the same name, Tomorrow Never Comes. What are the fans in for with the new album?
Well, we weren't really thinking about that when we did it. We sort of made up a rule day one of everything we do is right. No matter everything, doesn't matter what it is, it's all right. Nothing is wrong. And that opened the floodgates to all kinds of experimental, just general weirdness. And but there's a lot of stuff that sounds right up the lane of Touch in the past, like "Want to Hear You Say." That's been called very much a Touch song. And of course, Tomorrow Never Comes is the title of the album. It's also first single off the album. But then we go into some, we've been told by the critics, we've gotten a little heavier. Some of the songs are darker, some of the songs are lighter. One song I contributed, which is Tripping Over Shadows, has been called sort of a direct hit, mainstream kind of AOR song. Folks that have been looking for that kind of stuff, apparently, as I say, according to the critics, because we don't know. We just do what we do. They seem to be pretty pleased. Power Play, UK Metal, and Metal Magazine out of the UK gave us 10 out of 10, which was very, very rare. So we were pretty thrilled by that. Pretty thrilled.
Well, Doug, is there a different approach you use to writing songs for Touch compared to all the other people that you've played with over the years?
That's kind of interesting. Songs come to me, like, it was weird. When I was working with Todd Rundgren, Sometimes, you'll be sitting there having a conversation, and, I remember talking to Todd at one point, and he said to me, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm just looking at you, but I'm talking to myself." And the next thing you know, there's where that song came from. And we just cobbled it together on the spot. Other times we'll start out, particularly with Touch, we'll start out with some kind of a riff, some kind of a feel, and everybody will throw in their 2 cents in terms of, whoever's song it is that brought it in. And it'll morph from there. With me, I found that the best songs that I've ever written tend to be what I call little gifts, that they just sort of drop into your head completely formed or pretty close to it. That was the case with Trippin' Over Shadows. It was there. I was sitting there one day and this song just plopped into my head. And it's the same thing that happened with a couple of other songs. And I've noticed that in the past, those seem to be the real gems. So I don't know. There's no real science to it. Some you start with a riff, some you start with a lyric, some you start with a melody, and sometimes you get lucky. That's pretty much it.
Well, I read, too, your grandfather was a member of the Tin Pan Alley. So, I mean, it's safe to say maybe songwriting is in your blood here, I think.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. That was my grandfather. Yeah, Joe E. Howard. And I didn't really think of that when I started playing. I grew up in a theatrical family. Everybody was in show business, my family. And so I really didn't know how to do anything else like being an astronaut. You only know how to go up in space. I didn't really know anything else. But I don't know if it's genetic or what, but I've been really fortunate. I tell my kids, don't screw up a perfectly good hobby by turning pro. And don't use my career as an example, because I got very, very lucky, right place, right time. And, fortunately I had the chops to keep the gigs, but, yeah, it's growing up in my house was pretty interesting. Let's put it that way. Kind of like, the Barrymores on acid, I guess, or something.
Well, yeah, man. Speaking of the chops, I know the artists you've crossed paths with in your career. It's just, looking at your resume, you mentioned with Todd Rundgren, of course, Edgar Winter, and I was reading about your work with the Crystals. I mean, even one of those artists, that'd be a dream come true for most people. But, you've got all those under your belt.
That was my very first real pro touring gig was with the Crystals. And oddly enough, the guitar player in that band, for a period of time was Ricky Byrd from Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. Sure. We've known each other since we were 14. The New York music scene is back then, everybody pretty much knew each other. But yeah, Ricky and I were in the Crystals together. Yeah. And Roy Buchanan, I was with him very briefly, the guitarist, of course, for those that aren't sure. Brilliant player. And the Edgar Winter Group, that was probably the most fun in a band I've ever had. That band was just, every night was just hilarity. It was so much fun to be in that band. Yeah, it's been a long, strange trip. Indeed.
Well, and then of course, Touch has the accolade of being the first guys to play for the Monsters of Rock Festival. That obviously has been a big deal for a lot of people over the years.
Yeah, that was our first time in front of an audience of that size. The crowd estimate I've heard was anywhere from 50 to 60,000. It was looking out over a sea of kids, and kids setting fire to the ice cream trucks in the background. It was pretty wild. We were kind of the guinea pigs. That was the first time a show of that size had ever been attempted in the UK, and so when we got thrown out on stage, we were kind of the guinea pigs for the inputs. But once they settled the sound down after the first, maybe I remember 16 bars or so, we really leaned into it, and it was pretty wild experience, let's put it that way. And it prepped us, or at least me, for doing larger shows later on and arena shows. And but Touch had spent such a long amount of time rehearsing I mean, we were just so tight we could play through, a bomb blast. I mean, we wouldn't miss a cue. It was ingrained into our DNA at that point. Yeah, it was quite an honor to play Monsters of Rock in Donington, and it really it definitely put us on the map, apparently.
Well, Doug, I got to ask you this. I don't know how often you're asked, but a big deal for people my age. Huge show when you were doing the Masters of the Universe Power Tour. I want to ask you your memories of that.
Yeah, I've had a pretty wild career. The story behind that is I got a call from my agent at the time, my theatrical agent, because I used to occasionally act, which I'm not well, that's another story entirely. But anyway, she calls and says, yeah, so I've got this thing for you. It's you're going to be the lead vocalist for a tour based upon the He-Man, She-Ra, and the Master of the Universe toy line. And I hung up the phone. And she called back and she said, no, this is real. This is for real. And I said, yeah, right. And then she gave me the rundown of the way they were going to do this, which was huge. It was ridiculous how huge this was. It was a combination of an Ozzy tour, Wagner's The Ring, and a roller derby. I mean, it was, just insane how huge this was going to be. And the problem they had was they had created so many of these characters that, if you tried to put on a show, you had no idea who the hell was who. So the director, Tony Christopher, got the idea to have a narrator so that you basically could tell what the hell was going on. And he had to be a rock singer. And I really did not think that was right for me in the beginning, but, the capitalist sort of came out of me. And I started talking to them, and the initial money that they offered, again, I hung up the phone, and I just kept hanging up the phone until they came up with a package that I said, I think I'm going to try this because nothing's really going on, and I kind of like a bit of a change. And so there I was, lead vocalist live. I did 19 sold out shows at Radio City Music Hall in 10 days at one point. For this madness. But it was really pretty cool. I mean, despite the fact that it was, kind of odd being associated with Mattel and the He-Man characters, but the crowds, I mean, we were the number 2 grossing tour of that year. I think we outgrossed Genesis, and the only person that sold more tickets than us in terms of arena shows was Billy Joel that year. So,
wow.
Yeah. And I got to say, one thing that came out of that, a couple things, really loved the audiences, these kids and the adults. They were just so into it, and I was live, so I got to really interact with the houses. And I don't know, what I thought was a completely insane idea, and some people still kid me about it. I say, well, how many sold out shows have you done at Radio City? And all I can say is I came off of that tour pretty well set for a little while. So yeah, that's kind of the story of that.
That's awesome. Well, Doug, I know, again, the new album from Touch is out, Tomorrow Never Comes. Are you guys going to be maybe hitting the road later this year when things start to open up again?
We're talking about it. We're getting a lot of inquiries. We used to get a lot of inquiries out of the blue to begin with. The band, you have to remember, I mean, I've been doing this for coming up on 45 years, man. I've been rocking and rolling. And we're spread out all over the place. But that's not to say no. And, maybe it's just a question of us hanging up the phone enough times. Somebody will finally call up, with the right package. But it's a constant topic of conversation. Of course, the world has to get settled and reopened. But one of the cool things that's come out of all of this is that you're not limited any longer to selling seats. You don't have to just fill the seats in the arena or in the theater or even in the club for that matter. Live streaming has really come into its own, and it's not going away. So you can incorporate that into your shows now really effectively and basically sell tickets outside of the venue. and supplement things that way. My ex-employer, Todd Rundgren, did that very, very effectively this past year with his Nearly Human tour, where he incorporated live streaming into minimally filled venues, and it worked brilliantly. So never say never. Now, that's really, I guess, all I can say at this point, but you guys will be the first to hear about it.
Excellent. Well, again, the new album is out. Tomorrow Never Comes. Is there anything else maybe in the works for you, or something else we should watch out for?
I do have a couple of things, one in particular, but I cannot talk about it yet. But if it comes to fruition, it will, once again, probably like Masters, it'll probably surprise the hell out of everybody. But nope, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet.
Excellent. Doug, again, thank you so much for your time. I'm definitely excited for the new album here, and hopefully you can see you guys on the road here soon.
All right, man. Thanks a lot for the time. Appreciate it.
And once again, that was Doug Howard of the band Touch, and the new Touch album, Tomorrow Never Comes, is available now.